I'm back. So we've been talking about how to teach a child writing skills, and we have talked about the purpose of writing. We've talked about and how to make it fun. We've talked about knowing your audience. In today's video, we're going to talk about specialized vocabulary. So once you know that you're writing to a specific audience and you know why, you might need to use different words than you use in your normal life. I learned about this way back. I had taken a classical education workshop, and in classical education, there's this stage of development called the grammar stage. And in that stage of development, that's where you really come to grips with the truth that everything has its own set of vocabulary. Say that with me. Everything has its own set of vocabulary. If you're talking about, I'm looking at my exercise bike. If I'm looking at my exercise bike, it has specialized vocabulary. It has things like cadence, how fast your legs are going, resistance, how hard your legs are working. It has words like display and clip-ons, etc. If you're talking sewing, you're talking about threading and needles and knots. If you're talking Legos, you're talking about painful if you step on them in the middle of the night. If you talk basketball, you're talking about layups. You get the idea. In writing, in the brainstorming phase of writing, so you know that you're going to be writing this kind of thing, you know that this is the person or group that you're writing it for, and now you're brainstorming everything that you can think of about that topic or idea. And you might draw a blank. Well, how many words are there that have to do with basketball? And as your mind is like, okay, well, we've got ball and we've got court and we've got net. Well, what else is there? This is where you want to include your child and introduce them to the idea of a thesaurus, synonyms, right? The words that mean similar. For instance, if you're writing a story and there's a lot of dialogue, you don't want to overuse the word said. Although if you read a book, most of the time somebody's walking or talking and they're talking in dialogue, it will say he said, she said, they said. But in order to amp up the drama or the action of the story, they will toss in things like whispered or screamed or bellowed or laughed or chortled. These types of words that have to do with how the words come out of our mouth. Brainstorming through, okay, you know you're going to be writing about something, you know who it's for, let's fill up a piece of paper or a whiteboard with words that have to do with that topic. And that's where the hippopotamus comes in. I bet you were thinking I was going to break out into a hippopotamus, but I wasn't. Well, I guess I did. Hippopotamus. I love thesauruses. If you know me, which I hope that you will subscribe and hit the bell, because YouTube changed stuff, and if you don't hit the bell, you won't get notification of the next videos, and you're going to want to know when we talk about the 44 creative writing ideas or the 40 creative ideas that are coming up next. So subscribe and hit the bell. I love weird words. I used to work in a toy store when I was newly married. My husband was in the Navy and he was out at sea, and the way that I occupied my time was building a really hard puzzle at home. Really hard, took me 6 months the whole time he was gone. And I worked at a toy store. And there was this one game that I can't remember what the game was called, but it basically would take everyday cliches, everyday phrases, and it would blow them up into incredibly like fancy words, and you would have to figure out what the simple saying was. So the one that stuck in my head was, those who reside in monolithic structures should forbear from hurling monolithic substances. He who lives in a glass house should not throw stones. was reading a story with my now, gosh, he's almost 20, with my son, one of my 5 sons. And right in there, he's reading aloud and he says, in the dilapidated riverside hermitage. And I went, stop. What? He said, dilapidated riverside hermitage. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just a shack. A dilapidated riverside, guess where it was? On the river. Hermitage, a place, somebody that lives in a shack. Same son, another story. He's reading, phantasmagoric. Oh, I said stop. That just became my newest favorite word. As you are working on specialized vocabulary, fall in love with the words. Fall in love yourself, because it's addictive when you get excited that you came up with these fun words that express basketball, hoops, and whatever. I didn't do the research before I started the video, so I don't have any creative juice. You can go down to the comments and you can add any amazing words about basketball. But I like Hippo. Not just Hippo, but it's an online thesaurus called WordHippo.com. I like it. I like probably because it's clean, it's easy to see, and right at the top, just like any old thesaurus online, you just type in the word, and then it'll populate lists of words that have to do with that word. And I find it to be a really fresh, clean, easy to use site, and my kids love it. So you don't use WordHippo necessarily. You can use it at any point in the writing process. I love to use it in the brainstorming process. I can't think of anything to do with an owl. Remember the owl, the funny writing prompt? I can't think of anything to do with an owl. Well, you can put owl. What do we know about owls? Well, night. So you can put in night, and you might glean words like nocturnal or ocular, for their eyes or whatnot. But get really good at creating word banks with your kids so that as they are writing, they write their rough draft first, and you don't worry about crazy words. It's he said, she said, he sat, she sat. Easy. No, don't bombard yourself with crazy vocabulary. But then in the editing process, you can go, okay, well, he's sitting, but he's kind of like in one of those chairs by the pool. So instead of sitting, let's, word hippo, sit, lounge. He's lounging by the pool, and you can infuse creative vocabulary that way. So when it comes to specialized vocabulary, repeat all the time. Everything has its own set of vocabulary, and look for opportunities to say that out loud in public to your child. My boys are on a rowing crew in our area, and the first meeting, the coach was talking about the regattas that the boys were going to row in. Now, I knew what that was, but I asked, Coach, what's a regatta? And she said, oh, that's the word for a race in rowing. And I said, oh, I thought it might be a race, but I understand that everything has its own set of vocabulary, even rowing. And so anytime you hear a word that you don't know or that you think your kids don't know, you ask that person to explain what it is, and then you say, it's funny, everything has its own set of vocabulary, doesn't it? Have that be a natural part of your life. If you're at the auto store, that's another time. The mechanic quoted me a price for an OEM part, and I said, what does OEM stand for? And he said, oh, that's an aftermarket part. That means that it's been rebuilt. And I went, oh, I'm so glad I asked, because my husband would kill me if I put an aftermarket, whatever it was, in the car. We want new. That's not going to break. So specialized vocabulary. It's important to look through the lens of who the audience is and what the purpose of the writing is. If it's just for fun, then you're looking just for more senses type language. What do you see? What do you hear? What does it taste like? What does it feel like, right? If you're educating somebody or informing them, then you need to find those words that have to do with that topic. So we've talked about in the last videos, we've talked about knowing the purpose. Why are we writing? understanding the audience, who are we writing for, and now we've talked about using specialized vocabulary in order to communicate our ideas. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about writing ideas that you can do with your kids to give them the idea, give them opportunity to exercise these new writing skills, and to give you the opportunity to repeat the phrases, the 3 no-nos of writing, and everything has its own set of vocabulary. And then after that, we'll talk about how to format a page in MLA formatting, and that would be for your older students or college type students. So, you ready? Grab your goodies, whatever's in the descriptions for you, and give this a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell so that you get notified when I publish the next video. And I will see you in the next video.